Good morning, Jill Winebanks.
Good morning.
Your book is fantastic. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. You're enjoying it. That's the most important.
I can't believe I know you. Let's start with that. You are a big deal, as Joe Biden would say. I mean, just that whole time in history, and that you were right at the nexus of it, and these incredibly personal stories, and just the history of it all. It is just fantastic, Jill. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope it's a good story, well told, and that people read it like a novel. Not even though it's all true, of course, completely true.
It's so timely, not just the criminality in the Trump administration, but just us all having the conversation about misogyny after what's happened to Hillary and Elizabeth Warren and all the female candidates. Just the misogyny that you experienced being literally the only woman on the Watergate team back then is really quite. I don't know what to say. Right, it must be resonating with you that here we are so many years later, still without a female president.
It does. It's a sad day that we haven't advanced to where many countries. One of the first countries I worked in for Motorola was Pakistan, and there was a chapter in the book about women cannot, shall not, must not. And I said to my boss, maybe you should send someone else. And he said, no, I really need you to go. And then it turned out they ended up with a woman president long before us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if Pakistan can do it, we can do it.
Yeah. It's so interesting, the chapter about, you. I can only assume that they wanted you to be the one interrogating Rosemary Woods, who was Nixon's secretary, because they thought, okay, we'll send a woman. But you were the one that really broke that all open about how, she called it the stretch that she had to have done to have accidentally erased the tape. And you just proved that to be complete nonsense. And yet you sort of had a sense of empathy for her.
I did, but I want to make it clear that my questioning her had nothing to do with gender. Uh-huh. My questioning Robert Mardian, one of the defendants, did. But with Rosemary, it was that I felt Rick Benveniste, my partner, was taking too many witnesses. I said to him, I'm taking the next witness the White House calls, and then we're sharing equally from there forward.
Love that story.
Yeah. Every other witness.
You're nice, but you
happened to be Rosemary Woods. And what can I tell you?
Yeah. No, I love that story, that how you just asserted yourself even back then in terms of, being an equal out there. But, it's so funny. Everybody that has met you says, she's so nice. I just can't believe she's a good prosecutor. You're an amazing prosecutor. And yet you never lose your warmth and your humanity.
It's interesting because I always thought that, when you're working with people like Rick and Jim who are really charismatic and funny and witty and have a certain sense about them, and I'm much more logical, organized, but that's authentic to me. And one thing in front of a jury, you have to be authentic. You cannot be fake or they will not trust you. And I didn't realize until many years later when I was a partner at Jenner and Block and was working with a former U.S. attorney, Tom Sullivan, that not all men are like Rick and Jim.
Yeah.
Tom Sullivan is a logical, quiet, organized person, and he tries a case exactly like I do. So working with him was a revelation to me that it isn't a gender-based thing. It is how you present yourself, how you present a case, whether you're logical and calm and just, build fact upon fact upon facts until the jury goes, well, it's inevitable, that's obvious what she's doing. And so it was a good thing for me to learn that it's not gender-based. It is just style.
Yeah. Another review. Jill Winebanks has written a wondrous memoir that makes you yearn for the days when the good guys and a Watergate Girl finally won. Our friend Glenn Kirshner always says justice is coming. I have to hope so. I'm sure you saw this headline today. Trump orders Barr to investigate media's response to coronavirus. Yeah. I mean, and the question we have to ask is he going to do it? It's that legal?
I think the media should be investigating Trump's response to the coronavirus.
Yes. Yeah.
And that the American voter ought to be looking at Joe Biden and saying, he's the one that we want to be in charge of this response. He's calm.
Well, it looks like voters are saying that, huh?
Well, they are, and I think, today is a big day. It's the big Tuesday. 6 states are voting, and I think that's primary on people's minds. I don't feel safe because of anything that Donald Trump is doing to protect America from this virus. And there are things that can be done, which is turn it over to the experts. Let them make the decisions. Don't ask the vice president, who failed in terms of the HIV epidemic in Indiana. He made it worse by the actions he took. Why is he in charge? That's a danger to us. And so I think we have to, really think about that as we head to the polls. A week from now, it'll be Illinois' turn to vote, and I look forward to that.
And you've always been a Biden gal. I was a Elizabeth Warren gal, but it does certainly seem like people are coalescing. I know people are jumping ahead, but it's hard not to. When you see that tableau on stage last night. Biden's advisors are describing a return to normal plan if he should be elected. He wants known, trusted people around him. This all sounds so comforting. Many from the Obama years. He relished an emphasis on governing norms and restoring alliances. That includes respect for experts and for art and science of governing. Biden's advisors say it's important his vice president pick be a woman, an African American, or both. Some are hoping he would pick Warren to excite progressives. Others, VP choices Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Deval Patrick, Stacey Abrams, Amy Klobuchar. Interesting. Biden's chief of staff would likely be Ron Klain, which would be comforting in that he was the Ebola czar during Obama knows what he's doing.
No,
right.
I mean, it would be fantastic. Think about the names you just mentioned.
Right.
They're all great. They could have all been president.
Right.
And they would all be great cabinet members or vice presidents.
Yeah.
There are so many jobs. When I looked at the 20-plus candidates that started the race for the Democrats, I thought, what a great cabinet that would be.
Well,
They're all terrific.
Yeah, let me throw out the other ones that, they're saying John Kerry, maybe a new cabinet position devoted to climate change, or return to Secretary of State Susan Rice being mentioned for Secretary of State again. Sally Yates, Attorney General, if with Kamala was a VP. Elizabeth Warren, Treasury Secretary. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. Although I've heard a lot of Senate Majority Leader in terms of Elizabeth Warren. I mean, it just, again, you don't want to jump ahead, but good God, Jill, clearly the yearning to return to some basic normalcy and competence and people that know what they're doing, right?
It would be so refreshing. And we would be rejoining the Paris Peace Accord, the Paris climate change. There are just so many things that we have failed to do. Our leadership in the world has fallen to nothing. And we need to restore that. And, norms are as important as the rule of law. And so there are things that you can't write into law. You shouldn't have to think about every little detail. You just expect people to act in a normal way. And in this administration, that's not happening, and it's not helping us. It's hurting us.
Yeah.
And some of this is just, the coronavirus isn't a cause that Donald Trump, he didn't create it, but he's not dealing with it. And that's something that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the rule of law for a minute, because obviously the courts are holding, for the moment, some of them, right? I mean, Judge Reggie Walton, who was clearly Republican appointed and basically said Barr lied to the American people and wants to see the full unredacted Mueller report. I guess the question, first of all, is are we going to see that eventually? Are we going to see what's under those redactions finally?
I believe we will. Now, I don't know what's redacted. There may be some that are legitimate. But, again, we don't trust the government to have done that in a fair and honest way. And Barr has definitely done what Walton said. He lied to us. He manipulated the report. You had the Mueller report, which he saw. First, he summarized it in a few pages that totally misrepresented what we eventually saw, even redacted. Redacted, it did not say no collusion. It didn't say no obstruction. But he had already created the first impression, and it's very hard to change first impressions, so that many people just went, oh, that 3 or 4 pages, that's all I need to know, I'm done. And they didn't pay attention when the full thing came out. And then he had a press conference the day he was going to release it, and he, again, totally misrepresented what it said, had a press conference, waited a few hours before letting people actually see it, where they could then say, whoa, wait a minute, Mr. Barr, you said X, and it says not X. And
Yeah.
that's a real serious problem for America because we were misled. And when the Attorney General does that, and then when he does the president's bidding on investigating specific people, and I've said this to you before, it's one thing for the president to set policy at the Department of Justice, to say, I don't want to prosecute any antitrust cases because I think bigger is better. Many people would disagree with that. Your favorite candidate would certainly disagree with that.
Yeah.
But it's not okay for him to say, you can prosecute anything you want, but I want you to prosecute Amazon because I don't like them. I don't like their policy.
Well, let me ask you let me ask you one other. A number of former Republican lawmakers recently filed a Supreme Court brief arguing Trump cannot stop the Manhattan District Attorney's tax fraud investigation, signed by nearly 40 Republicans. They're concerned Trump's assertions of absolute immunity from the process while in office, and more generally his arguments against accountability in any forum, could impose lasting damage on our constitutional system of checks and balances, as well on the rule of law. I think the first time I'm going to quote this correctly, but the arc of the universe is long, but it always bends toward justice.
Yes.
I really do.
Nailed
do
it.
you, Jill? Nailed it.
You nailed the
Do you,
line.
I really do feel like this is only all going to be held back for so long, isn't it?
I agree completely. I've said from the beginning, first of all, I don't agree with the Office of Legal Counsel. I do not think anything prevents indicting a sitting president.
You said that in the book back in Nixon. Yes.
I said it back then, and I'm still saying it. Nothing has changed my mind.
Yeah.
But I also agree that the danger to democracy, the danger to our system of justice, is great in this administration, and that those Republicans are absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
The courts have made it clear during, starting again during Nixon, there is no such thing as absolute immunity. There is executive privilege, but that doesn't work if the conversation subpoenaed, if the document subpoenaed, if the information requested has to do with proving fraud or crime. There is a fraud and crime exception to privilege.
Yep.
You are privileged if you're discussing how to respond to the coronavirus, if you're discussing how to respond to a South Korean a threat on South Korea by North Korea. Those are policy decisions. Those you can discuss and have advice from a variety of sources. You cannot discuss how to do a crime, and you cannot discuss how to pressure a foreign government to give you something you're not entitled to as using your power as president.
Yeah.
That's a crime. And so it's obvious to me that they are right and that we cannot disallow investigations of the president by the state or, I would say, by the federal government. Now, he's in control, and so he's not allowing it. But the states can certainly follow up on criminal acts within state statutes.
That's why we got to fight with all our might, because he knows all this is coming when he is out of office. So, you know why I like Elizabeth Warren? Because I like super smart blonde ladies. And can I just say again, the way you wove together just the historical and the legal and the personal, the way you talked about your first marriage, it gave me hope that I could have a life someday. You've been happily married for 40 years now. After that.
It's true. There is life after a bad first marriage. And I only share my personal story because I'm hoping that it will help other people, men and women, to see the options available to them, and that hiding in a bad marriage is not always right thing to do, and that there are ways around it. I mean, none of my book is written as prescriptive. It's just a description of how I dealt with a variety of hurdles placed in my path. It also is a description of when the system worked.
It's almost like, nevertheless, you persisted. You did persist.
I did, and that's a good term now. Persisting is important now. And
you will persist until we see you July 11th in Chicago for Sexy Liberal.
I can't wait.
Yeah, we can't wait as well. And honestly, I'm gonna read the rest of the book on the plane to my mom on Friday, because I know after Oprah, you're waiting for my full review, which I'm going to give you as soon as.
Absolutely, and I just want you to know that if you listen to the audio part, there were a few errors. Like Rick Benveniste used to call me Jilly Bean.
Yes.
And somehow the narrator said, because I read the prologue and the epilogue, but a professional read in between, and she's really good. But she said, he called me Billie Jean.
Oh,
Not my
And you were not his lover.
no. They're going to update that book.
Oh, thank you for the acknowledgement. I understand that you acknowledged me in the book, which is the most important part of the whole thing.
And Travis is too.
I'm taking a picture with the pups when I go home to Fresno this weekend to see my mom.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. I love it. I love it.
Anyway, Watergate Girl, get it. It is just fantastic. And we just,
you.
and you're just a classy dame. And I say that because you are, and also because I like the flat A's for the people in Shanghaiburg listening.
I just want you to know that I was on Christiane Amanpour, and she played some audio of me right around the time of Watergate. And I had been away from Chicago long enough. I lost my Chicago accent.
Oh, no.
I know. But I listened to my voice and I went, oh, my God, it's a different person.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
I might have to learn to speak again.
I know.
no.
The Chicago way is what first made me fall in love with you. All
Oh,
right.
good. Well, in that case, I'm never going to lose.
All right. Love you, Jill. See you soon.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.